Hey everybody, this is Bobby, and we're going to be going over today in CorelDraw X7 the snapping and rulers. This should be a rather short one. Snapping is having the cursor aligned to a certain position based upon other things, and it's a little easier to explain when I start putting things on paper. And the rulers are just guides. We can modify the rulers to move around and do what we need to. Another thing that we may, we're going to go through it is going to be guidelines as well. So let's just get right into it. The rulers are along the top and the side. And if you notice, which is opposite of what engraving normally is that the zero line is along the bottom left. Now, some people, when you put it into the laser, the drag engraver, whatever it might be, it's in the top left. I usually don't change it. All you got to do is grab this corner here and move it to your new point, like so. And now you'll see that the left is 0, 0 is top. It really doesn't make that big of a deal. So I'm just going to Control Z back. Oops. Put that back where it was. Now, the reason why I don't change it is because it is exactly 0 along the edge, the bottom edge, and exactly 0 point along this edge. I leave it where it is because when I really need to get accurate measurements as far as multiplications or something like that, this comes very handy. The rulers, you could turn them on and off, and that's through the view, rulers, turns them off, or you can go to here. This little button here says show rulers. So that's one way of doing it. You can also turn on and off a grid, which will make the entire board look like graph paper. I don't know why you would use it. Some people like it. Or you could do it through here. If you also look through here, there's a baseline grid, which makes it look just like lined paper from school. Again, these are nice, but not really in the purview of engraving. So you can do a lot of things, and I usually leave on this two new things. Actually, the dynamic guide, I believe, is kind of new. I like it. It tells you a couple little bit of information without having to do a second investigation. So, for example, if I put a box here, and now I start another box, it shows me my diagonals when the diagonal is against that edge, but it also... See that little arrow left and right on the first one? Well, it's telling me that the width is exactly the same as the second box is the same as the first one. If I go up, eventually I'm going to become the same height. Where is it? I must have missed it. Oh boy. Call me a liar. It is going to call me a liar. Well, I know it works. For some reason, it's not working. Okay. So let's delete these two things. And also, I'm just going to show you a couple of these keyboard shortcuts that I use all the time. F4 would zoom into the object that you had. So let's say I put an X here and I hit F4. It brings me right into that. If I hit Shift F4, it brings me out to the sheet. That's a very, very handy one. And we're going to be using that an awful lot. Sometimes you want to get a little wider. You hit F3, brings you out, but we're going to stay at the sheet. Okay, so let's do some guidelines. Guidelines are very helpful when you're doing some layouts. Let's say you want to track or you want to align things to either the bottoms or a certain level that may not be easily shown. So let's say I have an acrylic piece that has a base on the bottom that's 1 inch, and I have a space that I cannot engrave for another 1/2 inch. So I have 1.5 inches I cannot use on the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll just go up to this line here, and I will drag it down to an area. Doesn't matter. If you go up here, it tells you what the y-axis. Now remember, the x-axis is left and right, and the y-axis is up and down. So I want this to be 1.5 inches. So I put 1.5, enter, and it moves that guideline down. Now these guidelines, if you look on the right side, are governed by these little buttons over here. Pencil means it can be locked, which is very handy. This means it will print. So if I turn this on, it will now print a stitch across that entire piece. But by default, it doesn't. It's just a guideline for you to lay out something, so we don't use it. The eyeball means, can you see it on screen? If I turn it off, you can't see it. Turn it on, you can see it. So that's going to be very handy later on. So that's the lessons for today. The snapping rulers and guidelines, they're pretty simple. You can create a whole bunch of different outlines here and guidelines. Oh, and also, a couple more things I might as well throw in here. Right now it's vertical and it's horizontal. If I click on it again, I get a center point, which we'll get into in a later episode, or I can grab this. If I change the angle, let's say I want to align something at an angle, or I can hold the constrain or the control. That's how I remember it. The control key will constrain it to I believe, a 15-degree click. And you'll see it pop over. I'm just holding it down. Okay? So that is for all of them. So control is a very handy key, and shift has its own thing, so we'll get over that in another episode. Thanks for joining me, and like me if you enjoy these. Thanks.